Okay, here we're trying to find the area of the triangle, and let's start with our formula. Area equals base times height divided by 2. Well, we know that there are two numbers here that could possibly be the base. The height is the 2.9. The right angle is your height. Measures from one side to the top. But notice that this right angle here, which line, if you were to keep going, would run in to this right angle? Well, obviously it's this line. So since this side would technically run into it and make a right angle, the height is perpendicular to the base. So the base has to be 5.8, and that's very tricky and hard to explain. But just remember, if I were to extend this base and extend this base, which one runs into the right angle? Well, the 5.8, and that is how we know what to use for the base. So when you multiply 5.8 times 2.9 and divide it by 2, and I don't know what she wants you to round to, I'm going to round to the tenths. It says 8.41. I'm going to round it to the tenths place and say 8.4 square kilometers, and that would be my answer. Okay, for this one, this is still a triangle, so let's write our formula. Area equals base times height divided by 2. And if you'll just practice writing your formula each time you're working one of these, it will help you remember those formulas. So we know the height is the dotted line that connects one side to the other or makes a right triangle. So we know the height is 8.5. And remember, the side where the height is perpendicular, so it makes a right angle. The height makes a right angle with the base, which means the base has to be 10. So keep in mind that you may think that as base as the bottom, but it's really the side where the height and the height and the base are perpendicular, meaning they make a right angle. So that would be 85 divided by 2 would be 42.5 square inches. Okay, so this is the area of a trapezoid, and I never use 1/2 in my formula. I just say divided by 2. But the formula is 1/2 the height times base 1 plus base 2, but the way that I write it is I say the height times the sum of the bases divided by 2. Well, what the height is the line that connects the two bases and is perpendicular to one of those bases. So the height here is 14, and you're probably getting good at finding the height, hopefully, from just practicing with the triangle. But this time it's a little bit easier to figure out the bases because the height connects them. So it doesn't matter which one you put for what, but your bases are 11 and 14. Sorry, 11 and 24. And we're going to divide that by 2. So you're going to do 14 times 35, and that's 490, and divide it by 2, and you're going to get 245 square centimeters, and that would be your answer. Okay, we're still doing area here, and so we want to find the area of a trapezoid, which is 1/2 height times base 1 plus base 2, or height times base 1 plus base 2 over 2. So our height is the little line that connects the two bases that makes a right angle, so it's 11.3, and our bases are the 9 and the 17, and we're going to divide that by 2, And so 26 times 11.3 is 293.8 divided by 2. And you would get 146.9 square miles. Okay, so this one is a little bit tricky, but even if you really couldn't, this is a trapezoid, so it's the 1/2 height times your bases, or your height times your bases divided by 2. Okay, so with this one, it's a little tricky. Really, you need to, if you can figure out these are your 3 magical numbers to get started, but your bases, they're directly across from each other. Here are your right angles. So this has to be your height, because it makes a right angle and it connects the bases. Maybe that's probably the easiest way to explain that. So your height is 10. Your bases are across from each other. They're 6 and 13. And divide that by 2. 19 times 10 is 190. Divided by 2 is 95 square feet. Okay, this is another trapezoid because we have the 2 bases and the height. Remember, 1/2 height times the bases, the sum of the bases, or your height times your sum of your bases divided by 2. Don't get this confused with the area of a triangle. Remember, the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. But the area of a trapezoid is your 2 bases together times your height divided by 2. So here, remember, your bases are directly across from each other. They're parallel. So your height joins your bases and makes a right angle. So your height is the 2, because it is measuring how far it is from one base to the other base, and it makes the right angle. So your bases are 7.1 plus 2.1, so that would be 9.8 times 2 is 19.6 divided by 2 would be 9.8 square inches. To find the base of a parallelogram with a height of 10.5, so we're trying to find the base. We know the height is 10.5, and we know the area is 189 square feet. So we're working backwards. We're using the area formula for a parallelogram. Remember, a parallelogram, I think it kind of looks like a rectangle type thing. So the formula is base times height. So your area, let's plug in what we know. We know the area is 189. We don't know the base, but we know the height. So we have base times 10.5. Or we could turn that around and say 10.5b. And then just solve for b. Get rid of the 10.5, divide. When you're finding the area, you're multiplying. So if you know the area, you're working backwards, you're going to divide. So basically 10.5 times what equals 189, or 189 divided by 10.5. So our base is 18. So it's really important that you keep your formulas straight. Remember, the formula for a triangle is base times height divided by 2. The formula for the area of a parallelogram is base times height. The formula for the area of a trapezoid is 1/2 height times base 1 plus base 2, or height times base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. And then the area for a rectangle is length times width. The area for a square is side square. So it's just go through and just practice writing the formulas down. That's going to be the hardest part, is keeping everything straight. Okay, a triangle has an area of 220 square meters. Find its height if its base measures 20 meters. So area equals base times height divided by 2, because we're doing a triangle. We know that the area is 220 square meters, and we know that the base is 20, and we're trying to find the height, so we have to solve for h. So I'm going to get rid of the fraction. It's divided by 2, so I'm going to multiply by 2. I'm going to multiply by 2, and I get 440 divided by 20. Equals 20h divided by 20, and divide by 20, and h equals 22 as the height, 22 meters. And we could check this, because we could say base times height, 22 times 20, and divided by 2. That would be 440 divided by 2 would be 220, which is the area that we started with. So it is correct. Okay, here we're dealing with a trapezoid. It has an area of 27.5 square centimeters. What's the measure of the height if the base measures 7 centimeters and 4 centimeters? So area equals height times base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2. So we know the area is 27.5, and we don't know the height. We do know the base is 7 and 4 divided by 2. So the first thing I'm going to do is times it by 2 and get rid of that, and times the other side by 2. And that would be 55, and then 7 plus 4 is 11, so 11 times h divided by 11, so h is 5. Anytime you want to get rid of a denominator, whatever's on the bottom, multiply both sides by it, because if you have 1 over 2 times 2 over 1, well, that's just 1. So that basically cancels out, because anything times 1 is going to be itself. So we're trying to find the length of the second base of a trapezoid, and I've already written the formula. One base is going to measure 8, and then we don't know the other base. And then the height is 13, and the area is 149.5. Okay, so let me put this back up for a minute. The height was 13, the base was 8 plus the other base divided by 2. I'm just plugging in what I know. I don't want to run out of time on my video. So I would start by multiplying by 2. So if I multiply this side by 2, I would get 299, and then I would get 104 plus 13b, and then I would subtract 104, and I would get 595, 195 plus equals 13b, divide by 13, divide by 13, and b would equal 115. And you could plug it back in to check it, because your bases are 15 and 8, that would be 23, and multiply that by 13 and divide by 2, and you'll get 149.5. That was the hardest one.